Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Those of you who haven't had a chance to do so, please find a seat. We're so glad you're here. And if you are joining us online, we're really glad that you are with us as well. You okay back there, Linda? You can't hear me. Where's Pastor Bob? We're good. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So thank you so much again for being here. My name is Katie Swartz, and I am on the staff here at St. James Lutheran Church, the host of our meeting for today. As we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. There are restrooms available should you need to use them. You go through out of the sanctuary and to your left, or to your left, and then through the first double doors immediately to the right, and you'll find the restrooms right there. Additionally, we have passed out to you some handouts, and so feel free, please, to use one of the books that's in the pew there to lean on as you are taking notes today. The pens that we handed out are brand new, so if they aren't quite writing yet, you can kind of give it a little scribble, and hopefully they'll all start working for you. If you are joining us online today, we're so glad you're here. We have a link to the handout if you're interested in using that to fill out your notes for today and information. Otherwise, if you can't access that, please feel free to just use any kind of piece of paper or type up on a computer or whatever is easiest for you. And I'll explain in a moment what it is that we're going to be looking for. So this morning's presentation is going to be about Microshelter communities. And you're going to hear more of a definition of what that is in just a moment. But our Microshelter group that has been working together for, well, I just joined a couple months ago, but for several years now, is a collaboration of individuals and organizations who are committed to the goal of helping our homeless neighbors to transform their lives. And they've been working for a long time on how we in Reading might be able to address this growing concern for everyone in our community. Today's presentation is not a sales pitch. We're here to share information, share our journey, share where we've been, share where we're hoping to go, and genuinely appreciate the input that you have to provide to us as we move forward in this collaborative effort. So in the spirit of this collaboration, we ask that everyone who is participating commit to responding to the presentation with thoughtfulness and care, not reacting with the gut, which we sometimes end up doing. I know I do. So we've provided you with note-taking handouts and writing utensils if you're here in person, and there's the link for those who are at home, or you, like I said, you can write or type just on any piece of paper. And what we're hoping that you can do is, as you are hearing the presentation, any questions, any thoughts, any comments that come up, you will put those on your sheet so that you don't forget. All of your questions are really important. All of your ideas are really important, so please write them down. And as we finish up our presentation today, we're going to ask that you spend just a few more minutes making your final notes, and then if you're ready, today you can leave your comments with us. If you're not ready, you are welcome to take the papers home with you, and then you can either drop them by the church one day this week or next week, or you can email us your responses or something like that if you need a little bit more time to reflect and consider your response to our presentation. So that we can maintain the spirit of community and collaboration that we've started with in this program, we ask that you only submit comments and questions and thoughts that you are willing to put your name on. We really want this to be a dialogue. We want to be able to respond to the people who are asking the questions of us. And so we ask that any questions or comments that are submitted include your name and some way to contact you, whether that be your phone number, your email address, your home address, some way for us to be able to be in dialogue with you, answer your questions, and have genuine collaboration in this effort. This conversation today is just the beginning of our conversation with our community. And so if after our presentation you'd like to stick around for a little while, we have several members of the Microshelter community group who are here today, and they would be willing to speak with you for a little while. And we want to have this be an ongoing conversation, so there'll be additional follow-ups that you'll receive, and I'll talk a little bit more about those as we move through the day. Without any further delay, I would like to introduce to you Laurel Park, who is the fearless leader of this charge, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about the history of microshelter communities and what exactly they are. Laurel.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so great to see you all here. So thank you for joining us. And over the first hour, as Katie said, we're going to spend some time just talking about what microshelter communities are. Some of you may have heard about them. For some of you, this may be the first time you've heard anything about them. So this is just an opportunity to just get your own questions and concerns and things that come to mind out. And so this will be a quick overview on my part with a little bit of history. Like all of us know, Reading has been striving to get a handle on the homeless situation. And it was several years ago that Kristen Schrader and a number of others, actually more than 5 years ago, set the groundwork for the work that we're doing here in Reading. So we can thank her and many others for getting us this on the road. Following the car and campfires, for some reason, the state got more realistic and started putting homelessness as a priority. All the people that were traumatized at those fires and unsheltered, I think got the state's attention. But we have to remember that our homeless friends out there, they're traumatized almost every single day in the lives that they live. So let's talk a little bit about Reading microshelters. This is the proposal that a team of us have come up with, and it's basically a transitional housing option for adults. It's shelter combined with supportive services, and shelter and individuals get an opportunity to stabilize so that they can, improve their life skills. Maybe they have addictions or other areas that need some work in order for them to move forward and eventually find permanent housing. Like everybody else, the homeless members in our community want a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And that's pretty hard to do when you're living in survival mode all the time. So nonprofits, faith communities, businesses, city and county officials, the general public, and all of us are striving to resolve this problem. So here are some examples of some of the more primitive microshelter communities. Some of these are in Eugene, Oregon, some are elsewhere. And the ones in Eugene are either hosted by Square One villages or community-supported shelters. So this first one is called Expressway. Okay, good. It's right near the railroad tracks, and it's just on the outskirts of Eugene. The second one is called Roosevelt Safe Spot. And this is a little community on leased city property. And the reason I put this picture in is it shows a fenced perimeter and inside one of the microshelters they have there. Very primitive, very simple, but there's some basic components that are important. This next one is called Opportunity Village, and it's located in a warehouse district, and I think it has 20 to 25 shelters in it. It's one of the larger ones. It's been around for over 10 years, so a lot of people have transitioned in and out of that particular community. The next one is in Washington State, and again, it's a very primitive site, but it's managed in a safe place for people to be. The next one is in Kansas, and this is a veteran site, and I was lucky enough to visit a veteran site in Eugene, also located next to the railroad tracks. And when you come up to it, all the shelters are lined up like an army post, and their flags up, and it's tidy, and they have such pride in where they live. Typical of Army veterans, military veterans, not just Army. The next one is a picture of some Conestoga Huts. And Eric DeBurr and his wife, Kristen Fay, actually built these and lived in one for quite a while. and discovered that these are so inexpensive and easy to assemble, this might be a good way to start helping people get off the streets. And so that's what they did. They even provide a manual on how to build one yourself. They can build them in panels of like 5 sections and assemble them in an hour. But if you want to build it from scratch, there's a manual with down to the very last nail on how to do it. So we decided we would do that. So 3 years ago and one day, January 21st, pouring down rain, the Chiba students right down the road built our first one. And Chiba stands for California Heritage Youth Build Academy. It's a charter school that has various paths of careers, and construction is one of them. And I thought the students in the construction class would be ideal to build Reading's first microshelter, and they did. So over the next 3 years, a team of us and the Chiba students, as well as others, have been raising the community's awareness about what these kinds of options are for people that need housing. And so many people have come to look at this one little Conestoga hut. It's located in the backyard of Chiba, right down the street. So anybody that's interested can call and take a tour. And what we did is the Chiba students and myself or others on our team would meet people at the location, talk about what a Conestoga hut or other options are, and then have a conversation. And we would get their ideas, we would share ours, we'd get their concerns, and it was an opportunity to have a conversation. We had city officials, Barry Tippin from city manager, Kristen Schrader, a number of the other city council members, county people, community organizations, youth groups, fire marshal. We had a lot of people come through, and they gave us great input, which we could then modify to move in a direction that was workable for everybody. So we welcome that input. We even had a representative from Dianne Feinstein's office come, who now is actually helping us with a grant. So the level of commitment and collaboration of the folks in Reading has been phenomenal. So the city officials declared Reading as an emergency shelter crisis not long ago, and they passed an ordinance and administrative guidelines for the operations of all these communities. The site locations are determined by city zoning guidelines and suitability, and oversight, including the operations and supportive services, will always be carried out by the host entities. Funding resources can range from federal, state, and local funds, grants, community foundations, private donations. We all know that unregulated encampments are clearly not working for anyone. And so we're trying to come up with some workable alternatives. And in spite of the messiness of the encampments that we see all around us, for the most part, all of us have our hearts go out to people that are struggling, and we want to know what can we do to help this situation. So there are many different models and management styles for a microshelter community. So here are a few basic components of the microshelter community that we think might work in Reading. Basically, start with an enclosed perimeter and locking front gate. A mailbox. If you don't have an established residence where you can receive mail, you're kind of out there in the dark. Each individual or couple will get their own shelter with a locking door. And as I was visiting some of these sites in Eugene, I found that this was the biggest game changer for every one of the residents in these sites. And I said, well, why is that? And one young man by the name of Francis said, it's the first time in a number of years that he could sleep all night safely. He could go into his little shelter, lock the door, and sleep without feeling like he was going to be attacked or robbed, and he was safe. The other thing it did is in the daytime, you can leave all your belongings in your shelter, lock the door, and go about your way. You don't have to sit on a corner and protect the few items you have. You can get help for maybe your addictions, mental health issues, look for part-time work, life skills. There's all kinds of things that need to happen. when you're on the street and then you're trying to incorporate back into the community. So there are a couple of things that are shared on these sites, things like a resource office, common room like a living room area, kitchen, toilet, showers, a trash receptacle. And one thing that is critical in these little communities is that the residents are required to participate in the operations and maintenance of their little community. So a couple of examples of site configurations can look like this. The first one is a model of a very small site, and these are popular with churches because churches are really not equipped usually to operate or host a large site. So this particular site may have like 3 units on it, and it's usually, these are adjacent to an existing building like a church because they'll still need showers, pantry, a place to meet with a counselor, and so forth. So the smaller models have facilities adjacent to them. The second model is of a larger site, and in Reading, we've decided that no more than 20 shelters is big enough for a site. And in studying some of the larger models we've seen throughout the country, they're pretty hard to manage when they get beyond that. And so we think 20 is enough shelters at any one site. And these larger sites, all the facilities will be on site, kitchen, showers, all that. So this is a pretty quick overview. This is it in a nutshell. Homelessness impacts all of us, and it's going to take all of us to solve this. So I think I'll stop there, and I'll reintroduce Katie, our next speaker, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. So now that you all have a little bit of a sense of what a microshelter community is, you might be wondering, why here? Why this place? And so I'd like to share with you a little bit of how St. James got involved in this conversation and why we're interested in exploring the possibility of hosting one of these microshelter communities on our property. St. James is part of a national denomination called the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And the stated vision of the denomination is to see a world experiencing the difference God's grace and love in Christ make for all people and creation. And here at St. James, similarly, our vision statement says, empowered by faith, we will be a community of welcome, which experiences the tangible presence of God through transformed lives that serve the community and the world in the name of Jesus. So as a church community and a church denomination, we use Christian language because of our personal faith. But we believe that all people of goodwill can and should be part of addressing the needs of their fellow humans as part of our human community. And this means that we as Lutherans are committed to partnering with people of various faiths or no faith at all to bring about a real, meaningful, and tangible difference in the lives of our members and our surrounding community. And we have worked to fulfill this vision in relation to homelessness as the presence of homeless individuals in our neighborhood has grown over the past several years. I don't know if some of you who even live in the neighborhood here are aware of this, but we've had several small homeless encampments on and off near the creek that's just over here on the other side of Goodwater Avenue. And we here at the church frequently have to ask campers to move their tents and belongings off of our property out of concern for their safety and the liability of the church. I'm sure a lot of you share my feelings of frustration and concern that there's just no good solution available when interacting with people who aren't looking for anything more than to just fulfill the basic needs of shelter. And there's not really much that we can do to help them, to maybe give them a little bit of water and a smile and send them on their way. And to me, it just never felt like it was enough. And so when I first heard about Laurel and her group and what they're doing to develop this concept of microshelter communities within the parameters of our housing crisis and emergency sleeping cabin legislation that our city recently passed, I was immediately grabbed by the fact that this is a fairly simple solution to this very complex problem. If we had sanctioned, safe, established microshelters in our community for a handful of people who could stay on our property legally and safely, we would be pulling those campers away from the unsafe and unsanctioned encampments that they've been living in, and we could make our entire community safer. We lower the risk of fire starting down by the creek. We establish more control over who is spending time in our neighborhood and know who they are. We have ways to communicate with them if there are any problems or concerns. And best of all, in my eyes, we get to be part of improving our larger community by helping people who want to transition from the street into being successful and productive members of our community. I think that if we help each other, we can build up our community and make it a better, more resilient, more stable place for all of us to live. So St. James has an undeveloped lot behind our building in our parking lot just over here. And we've been exploring the possibility of establishing this microshelter community on this lot in relationship with the microshelter community group that is represented here today. We've been working with these MSC leaders to develop possible plans and share these ideas and plans with our connections through the city of Reading. We've also established a steering task force of church members who are in conversation, just like the one that we're here beginning today with all of you. We're sharing information, we're providing responses, and we're asking a lot of good questions to make sure that this is truly a collaborative effort and all of our T's are crossed and I's dotted. So as our conversation moves forward, our elected church leaders will make a decision about whether we as a church want to officially approve and welcome the microshelter community onto our property. Now, as Laurel mentioned earlier, any microshelter communities that are established in Reading will and must be fully managed by a site manager. And one requirement for residency will be that they work with a case manager to establish a recovery plan toward permanent housing and a transformed lifestyle. And we at St. James are fortunate to have a relationship with an organization that is already doing this called Lutheran Social Services of Northern California. They are an affiliated nonprofit that has stepped up to provide case management for our microshelter community should it come to fruition. St. James is very grateful to be part of this team and part of this conversation, and we are excited to welcome many of you into this conversation as well. We hope to use this opportunity to live our faith in the world and make a real difference for our neighbors in need. Thank you. Laurel?
So I'm not Elaine Carlson, but I will introduce him just briefly. He is out due to illness, but through technology up here in the corner, it looks like we're patching him through. So I will just say a couple things about him, and then if he's on, he will take it from there. So we do have another Chiba person here if I run into difficulty who's well-versed on what's going on at Chiba. So Elaine Carlson, I consider him a pillar in our community. He's a hard worker, great family man, great, huge heart, highly skilled, well-connected with everybody in the community, and an avid bike rider. And he's been working at Chiba for many years. When out of the blue, he got this other awesome job offer, so he's checking that out. But he's still connected with Chiba, and he's still connected with the microshelter stuff that we're doing. So as I mentioned before, Chiba is a charter school, and one of the paths that students participate in is construction. And I've watched these students in action, and Lane is right in there with them, as Shelley and a number of others that are awesome staff for the Chiba students. What I found most heartwarming about what Lane and Shelley and all the other instructors do is they help the students not only construct these microshelters, but the students got to understand what they were for. And when they would help give tours to people in the community, they not only shared how the blueprints worked and how the insulation works over here, but they talked about the importance of why we have these microshelters. And the day that we built that first Conestoga hut in the rain, we stopped for lunch, And during lunch, I was kind of walking around and I heard a couple of the students inside the hut kind of talking, and one of them said, "Let's get this built so we can get a homeless person in here tonight." This was a 14-year-old kid. They got it. So I am so impressed with the Chiba community and the students and the staff there. They're a part of what's changing our culture and making our community better. Just a real simple example. So how are we doing with Lane? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. As Laurel so kindly introduced me, my name is Elaine Carlson. I'm representing California Heritage Youth Build Academy this morning. I'm so glad you're all here. Good morning. So California Heritage Youth Build Academy, you learned a little bit about us. We're part of a broader network called Youth Build USA. So it's a nonprofit that's nationwide, actually global. There's a global connection too. But we serve youth or young adults, target age 16 to 24 years old, do not have a high school diploma. And we work on getting them that high school diploma, as well as teaching them some job and trade skills and just giving them the confidence to navigate life and move forward. But part of the Youth Build movement, in order to serve that mission of serving the youth, is also getting involved in affordable housing projects. So most youth builds around the country work with, say, Habitat for Humanities or other organizations to get the job skills training, but it's a dual purpose to also give the young adults that we work with purpose outside of themselves while they're gaining those trade skills. So we fell into this organization, as Laurel mentioned, a couple years ago. I started attending the meetings, and Laurel proposed that we build this Conestoga Hut on our property as a showcase and utilize our students to do so. And that was a wonderful project. Our students were so engaged in this idea of being part of the solution and providing shelter for the unsheltered in our community. So from that, all those discussions that Laurel mentioned came out of that Conestoga Hut being on our property. So as we began to discuss idea of different models that could be incorporated in Reading, we got feedback from fire marshal and the other city officials. And we were eventually pointed towards this Appendix O in the state building code, where it actually designates these emergency sleeping cabins and talks about the codes for them. And as a trades training program, the opportunity to build things that were actually regulated under a construction building code was a neat idea. So we kind of took it upon ourselves at Chiba to reach out to Butler Engineering here in town to develop plans for these sleeping cabins that would meet this code. And so Butler was kind enough to donate their time and create the first set of plans, actually two sets, as Laurel mentioned. There's a smaller, a single unit, and then a double occupancy unit. And so we reached out to them. They developed the plans for these, and on our campus again, where the Conestoga Hut is, we built one of each of these models, as you've seen a couple of pictures of. So let's talk a little bit about the site plan. Next slide, Karen. So the site plan itself, also we reached out again to Butler Engineering after meeting with Lutheran, with the whole team there on site and looking at it, seeing St. James' vision to kind of preserve much of that site, the tree cover, and create this communal feel. So we gave that feedback to Butler Engineering. You saw a slide earlier with them doing the survey work. So they surveyed the site and came up with this following site plan. Next, I think you have it up there. So they created this, what kind of an expandable site plan. So we have kind of a phase 1 and a phase 2. creates a communal feel with the sleeping cabins kind of around each other, and then the communal spaces that Laurel mentioned, and then access for all the services that will be provided. Next slide. So this is a project that we're extremely excited about as a youth build program. Our last 2.5 years or so have been all car fire recovery efforts, and rebuilding homes and improving properties for fire victims. And we're excited about this transition, and the timing's good for us to be part of building these sleeping cabins for this village, and hopefully others. So it's a great opportunity for our students. As we said, we're a trades training program. These sleeping cabins provide a sort of a small look at the construction trade on a small scale, but all the way through. So students can learn to build the floors, frame the walls, side them, insulate. There's even wiring. They do have electrical circuits. And then everything through roofing and drywall, installing windows and doors. So perfect project. Very excited about it. Our vision is to not only have Chiva doing this, but community volunteers. There's members of St. James and other churches who have expressed interest in helping out. And so we see a lot of community mentors coming alongside our students and helping with this project. So we're very excited about it. Next slide. I think I mentioned this before, that we already have the plans for the two. We've actually gone back to Butler, and after we built the first two pilot models, we came up with some changes that would bring costs down and also make them a little more inviting as far as usable space inside. So as with most construction, you learn as you go. And so we've got the new plans updated and ready to go, and we're just anxious to get going on this site and provide these great little shelters that will be secure. And our students are so excited to be part of this solution, and so is our staff. Next slide, just a few pictures when we were building the first ones. These are built to be transportable. You can see the one coming off the trailer when we had our little event out at Simpson. Okay, I think that wraps it up for me. I'll stick around for questions and answers at the end. But I think that's it. I'm going to mute myself now so I don't mess up the sound.
Thanks for coming. I'm Paul Abbott. I've had the privilege of working almost 5 days a week for 2 years out in the camps and streets of Reading with the homeless. And boy, have I learned a lot. You have no idea. I worked with the Good News Rescue Mission as the outreach coordinator for a year, and since then I've been with Shasta Thrive, in Shasta County. Heading up a team working with the Microshelter communities. We have in mind, like Laurel, to equip nonprofits, but especially churches for Shasta Thrive, to create them and to learn how to create community with our homeless neighbors. Next slide. So an MSC, Microshelter Community, provides a safe place that they just don't have. If I've learned anything out there, they're in a survival mode. It's a complex group. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but basically you have about a third of the people out there that really want a hand up. They're stuck. They have addictions and different things, but they are really surprised that they're out there. And my heart breaks for them especially. There's another third that are a bit comatose. They're worse on drugs. There's mental health issues and such that are really sad. But they could probably be influenced if we start working with the group that want the hand up and get some forward movement going into Microshelter communities. And then because of the lack of jails and prisons, room in prisons and other things, there's quite a few people that, it's a bit dark out there. I'm not sure what we're going to do with them just yet, but we're going to start with the ones that we can help, right? So not everybody's a thief, not everybody's a criminal. There's some people out there that you would just die for to help. And that's one reason we're here, because we realize that. So this MSC provides a safe place and some context for community that we can build. One thing they feel rejected by society, they're dirty, their teeth are falling out and such, and for them to feel valued and accepted is just great. Next slide, please. So why microshelter communities at churches? Well, show me your community of friends and I'll show you your future. You can look back, all of you, to who's helped you in life. Your family, some mentor, some teacher. A lot of these people just didn't get that break. They've had a really rough time at it. And they need a new community. They don't need their community of friends out there. They need a community of people that will integrate them into their community of faith, so to speak. History shows anyway, if you look at it, if we just put all of our troubled people out in a ghetto we segregate them, they just reproduce, right? That's not the way to go. We need to embrace people that are having a hard time and be family to them. Next slide. Have MSC succeeded elsewhere? Well, they have, and Laurel, you already talked about that a good bit, community-supported shelters. I went down to Austin, Texas to see Community First Village, which is a great place too, and there's exciting things happening all over the U.S., and I'm excited about learning from what they've done and applying that, as we are seeking to do now, and going further, hopefully. Next slide. Who will be chosen? Well, the key is discerning who wants to hand up, as I already met. And that's where we have a hand up on things, because we've been out in the camps and on the streets for a couple of years now. We know a lot of people. We know about 40 people that we would love to give a hand up to, and we want to partner with churches to get to know them out there, so that selection process is based on relationship, not just some kind of chance thing. There's no way a criminal is going to be invited to come here. That's not wanting a hand up, if that makes sense. Next slide. Is the MSC managed? Oh yeah. First of all, we want people to take more and more control of their development process, responsibility for their lives. We want them to help them have trust and hope again, embrace them, so they're going to be a part of managing their own community. That's that resident MSC Advisory Council. And then, of course, you have the MSC, like St. James. They're the host entity council, advisory council as well, working with that MSC team out there, the residents, the formerly homeless residents, to do a good job of managing their lives together and working out problems and issues and moving on. And in terms of Shasta Thrive, we're partnering with St. James and Laurel and everyone else to equip people to do that here at the church and other places, and working with professional case managers and such. So next slide. Yeah. So what happens during this 6 to 10 months? Because remember, microshelter communities are just transitionals. This isn't forever. This is to get them in a safe place where they can start dealing with the issues that got them into homelessness in the first place. And we'll do that with a large group of people. It's not just St. James, it's not just us. Anyone that cares about these people, and there's quite a few, will help out in that process. So they're working on things like citizen basics, life choices, skills, resumes, paying it forward, helping other people. I'm amazed at, especially these people that want the hand up, they're helping each other. They're making sacrifices for people. There are people that are so messed up out there that our Shasta County system can't help them. So who's helping them? It's the people that are homeless. Just breaks your heart, what I've seen out there. Anyway, it's messy, but we can do it. And of course, community, co-discovering a new home with new friends. There's this saying that I've learned over the years. I've done mostly community development in Africa for about 30 years in different places around the world, working with refugee camps. And if I've learned anything, it takes a lot of people to really raise up a child or to heal someone, and it kind of is the same way here. our homeless neighbors, they need a group of people to help them heal. It's just not one person. It's really community. And of course, that's what I'm talking about, right? The community aspect. Next slide. Is the city of Reading a promoter of microshelter communities? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you read the recent articles and such, they'll say they're doing it, and they are. You know, we're coming alongside. They've made the ordinances that needed to happen, and I believe, Katie, there's a sheet of paper that they have where they can go to links for these videos. I highly suggest you watching a few of the videos that are mentioned. There's this one video from Eugene, Oregon. That's just priceless. Are you going to show that now, or are they going to? You can do it now? Great. Okay. I love this one here. This is the guy that started community-supported shelters and who developed the Conestoga Hut that Laura went up to see and purchase. So he's explaining about how they started, very simply. And then we're going to have a lady, one of the reverends from one of the churches, just talk about how they just got started and are making a difference. There she is, Nancy Gallagher. I hope we can get the sound. What she says here is priceless. I just love it.
We are mighty, we are fierce. We cannot solve all the problems, but we are solving problems. Do you want to shop or do you want to set up? You want to go with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You shopping.
Yeah, I'll do. You can just wander behind me. Do you want to start setting up the bags?
I can do that. I clean the church every Saturday night, so everything's nice and spiffy for Sunday morning. I'm happier now than I ever been because I get a chance to give back. I don't have to do anything. You know, I do it because I want to. I'm finally starting to enjoy my life. I'm happy now. I mean, I was staying in the woods until a treetop fell on my tent, so I'm humble, I'm happy.
Part of the reason that we moved downtown, one of the reasons was we needed a bigger space. That was the basic reason. But we talked about the fact that it would allow us to do more social justice work.
I enjoy it. I've gotten to know her, and we have a nice time, and we're very competitive, so we have a whole lot of fun with each other doing this.
We have a church person that's connected to each person. However, that doesn't mean that the residents really want to interact very much. Vicki is the exception.
I've been on the other side of the totem pole, hon. Let me tell you, it ain't no fun. My gratitude and my love for the women in the church and stuff, I would never forget it. Yeah, let me put the key back.
Each time we do something else to support the people in our parking lot, there'll be somebody that'll say, are you gonna make these people too comfortable? And they'll never want to move. And I said, have you been inside the hut?
I have a tarp up there because the rain has a tendency to go woof right inside that door.
I think that if you're living in the church parking lot, that it is not too easy.
There's some huge, I guess, blessing. I don't know what to say, but it's very motivating to be a part of. So I'm excited for the potential here. Next slide. Laurel already talked about the MSC composition, what's there, so we can go on to the next slide. Just some kitchen options, what they could look like in terms of having a kitchen. It could be something portable like this. Next slide. Or this is at a community-supported shelters place, just an outdoor kitchen, because remember, they're taking care of themselves out there, so we're just helping them take care of themselves in a better way. So just having a kitchen like this is a huge step up, having a barbecue, coming together, but they're still taking more and more control of their life. We're helping with that. Next slide. Common areas could look like that. There's a lot of different options. Next slide. Or an open model, we readapt that, maybe put sides on, something like that. Then, next slide. Just some other examples of what we've seen in other microshelter communities in terms of a common area. Next slide. Showers don't have to be complicated. They would die for one just like this out in the camps. Let me tell you, it's a big problem, especially when it's cold, and something with hot water too. Not expensive, doable. Next slide. Or even, a trailer. They make showers like this as well. Next slide. And the toilets, porta potties. These are rare for them as well. It's a pain. I was sharing with somebody, I was pulling pull-ups for a 66-year-old woman yesterday because she's crippled, she can't get out of her tent, and she can only just go in diapers. And she would love to have a toilet like this. Next slide. After the MSC, that's a big question too, right? Because what happens after that, this 6 to 10 months? Well, there's a lot of different options. Some of them we're working on already, and some exist already, like group homes, shared rentals, renting for a couple of people. They're having a hard time renting anything here in Reading, anybody, let alone someone who has a few strikes against them. It's almost impossible to rent a house. So we would help rent something, sublet. It'd be part of our relationship with them. Low-cost housing, HUD, always applying for housing with them. ADUs are accessory dwelling units, kind of like an annex at your garage or a mother-in-law cottage out back. You get to know someone well. You say, hey, Kyle, why don't you just come out and be in our garage? We can help you till you get a good job and you save up your money and you move on. That's another option. Tiny home villages, like Square One Villages, you'll see the links to those, and Community First Village in Texas, you'll also notice those as well. Next slide. And as I mentioned, Shasta Thrive has been going for 10 years. They had a community house for the poor and the homeless in Anderson called Mantor House, and very involved with assessments, so not only for the mentors or the advocates, but also for the people coming in, resource coaching and such. Next slide. Work and small business opportunities would be a part of the MSC and ongoing beyond that, because everybody loves something, so when you find what makes somebody tick, it's real easy to surf off of that and go on to something that they could practically do and possibly get a job. We're always going to shoot high. We're not going to go for the low bar. Just collecting SSI or whatever. We're going to really go for what makes them tick and move ahead. Next slide. Once again, I'll just kind of go back over this to understand why are people homeless. You got to go to the root cause. We see the effects, and sometimes we think the effects are the cause, but no, what we found out, next slide, is that the single greatest cause, not always, but the greatest cause is a catastrophic loss of family, or an abusive family, or no family, or the foster care system. Their world just does not make sense. It never did. You listen to their stories and you realize that they grew up in a family or a context where there were no common sense decisions being made. Their parents are drug addicts, or they're abusive, or they're mental, or whatever. It breaks your heart. Next slide. And that engenders all these different things that happen. And I won't read this off. You've seen this before. You've heard about this in the homeless community, so there's nothing new here. But just to say that community and becoming a friend, almost like the family they never have, is what really makes the huge difference here. And that's why MSCs are so important. Next slide. So together, that's how we can shift the paradigm. They have a safe place with their own space. They're always losing things because people are stealing from each other. The drugs really enhance that. I won't go into detail about that, but just new friends, case management, access to healthcare, rather, really helps. A healthy culture, yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Paul and Laurel and Lane online. And thank you everyone again for being here today. That concludes the end of our formal presentation. Just a reminder that we really would love to hear your feedback on our presentation, your additional questions, your comments, your response to this plan. Please make sure that you do put your name on any feedback that you give us, whether it's in paper form or by sending us an email. If you did not get a chance to pick up the half-sheet contact form on your way in, please grab one on your way out. Linda's in the back there, she's got this, so she can make sure you get one. And if you're online, the link to our contact sheet should go into the chat here at any moment. Hopefully, Jason, if you could take care of that for us, that would be wonderful. If you want to and you're ready to do so, you can turn in your sheets today as you leave. If you feel like you just need a little bit more time to kind of chew on all of this information that you've received today, which I know is a lot, you are certainly welcome to take your sheets home with you, or you can leave the sheet and then send us an email later, or drop by the church and drop off something paper written, or you can mail it to us. Our address is on the contact sheet. Anything that's easy for you, we want to be in contact and conversation with you. If you received an invitation in the mail to this meeting, you will receive another mailing in the next couple of weeks that will begin the process of answering your questions and responding to your comments. And so you'll also be invited to an informal open house that we're hoping to plan so that you can check out our space in the back, just to stop by and chat with someone and see kind of what our thoughts are for the use of our space in the back lot here. So those things are in the works and on their way here. As this conversation continues, some of you may also receive an official notification from the city to let you know that this project has received approval and will be moving forward if the process continues to move forward at the great clip that it is currently taking. And I'd like, at this time, all of the members of our Microshelter community group or anyone here from our St. James Task Force who feels comfortable chatting with someone, if you could please stand up. And everyone who's here can take a look around, and if you'd like to stick around for just a few minutes and chat with someone who has a little bit more knowledge of what's going on here, any of these people would be happy to do that. If you're online, we have Lane, who had to join us electronically, and then also Pastor Bob from St. James here. They're available on the chat, and they will be sticking around for a little while so that you can have some interaction with them if you'd like to answer some questions or give some longer feedback than is possible just in jotting something down or an email. So thank you all so much again for being here. We will be in continued contact with you about this process, and I really hope that you have gotten a lot out of this and have gotten some of your questions answered. Lots more questions to come, lots more conversation to come, and we really appreciate you being part of this today. So thank you very much.